Welcome back, everyone. If you absolutely love dissecting how world-class engineering actually comes together, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the literal birthplace of a legend. In this explainer, we're going to walk right through the Zuffenhausen factory to witness the birth of the Porsche 911. We are going to look at everything, from the foundational engineering and materials that make up its aerodynamic shell to the screaming engines and transmissions that give it life. Let's get started.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think of this agenda as our personal factory tour map today. We'll hit Section 1, the blueprint of a 911, 2, forging the aerodynamic body, 3, the beating boxer heart, 4, evolution of the transmission, 5, braking and electronic systems, and finally Section 6, the wetting and final polish.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, the blueprint of a 911. To really understand this machine, you have to understand the culture that builds it. This is a facility that perfectly balances a 75-year legacy of precision engineering with staggering, state-of-the-art automation.
The underlying philosophy governing the entire plant is a strict zero-defect tolerance. Literally, there's no room for error. And what makes the modern factory so fascinating is their use of HRC, or human-robot collaboration. These aren't just mindless machines swinging around. They are collaborative robots equipped with highly sensitive sensors that instantly stop the second a human technician gets too close to the safety cell. It's this incredible ballet where exquisite human craftsmanship meets cutting-edge robotics.
That brings us to Section 2, forging the aerodynamic body. Imagine just walking into the body shop. You've got the smell of hot-formed steel in the air, and you're watching this massive scale of lightweight aluminum slowly coming together to form that unmistakable 911 silhouette.
The whole assembly of the modern 992 body shell happens in a highly automated 9-step process. It starts by joining the front, rear, and center floor pan to the chassis. Then, robots meticulously add the front wheel arches and shock mounts. Finally, the modular roof, doors, and fenders are mounted. The real genius here, though, is the intelligent material mix. They use extruded aluminum profiles to keep the car incredibly light, but then Porsche wraps the passenger compartment in ultra-strong, hot-formed steel, just to ensure maximum occupant protection.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the number 180 meters. That is the record-breaking total length of bonded seam holding a modern 911 together. We aren't just talking about basic welding anymore. It's about advanced structural adhesives, friction element welding, and self-piercing rivets, all working together to give the chassis its unbelievable rigidity.
And that body isn't just rigid, it's practically alive. Take the 911 Turbo S, for example. The aerodynamic features dynamically react to exactly how you're driving. You've got an active rear wing to reduce lift and drag, an adaptive front spoiler lip, 5 vertical cooling air flaps, and adaptive front diffusers in the underbody paneling. When you're just cruising, those flaps close up to reduce drag, but hit the track and they open wide to cool the engine and the brakes. When everything is in its most efficient position, the drag coefficient actually drops by up to 10%. That's huge!
Let's leave the body shop and head down the line to Section 3, the beating boxer heart. This is the engine assembly hall, where the flat 6 engine, the literal beating heart of this supercar, is built with surgical precision.
To truly appreciate where we are today, we kind of need to look at where we started. Here we have the original technical data for the classic 993 Carrera drive unit. This gives us our historical baseline. It featured a naturally aspirated 3.6-liter displacement, pushing out a highly respectable 272 horsepower.
Diving into that original engine design and the cooling specs, you can just see the absolute mechanical purity of the classic era. Notice the legendary air-cooled system driven by the V-belt off the crankshaft and the dry sump lubrication system. I mean, this was raw mechanical engineering at its finest.
But fast forward to today, and we hit a completely different stratosphere, 9,000 RPM. Just think about that for a second. That is the screaming maximum engine speed of the modern 911 ST. The physics and the metallurgical strength required to keep pistons flying at that speed without just tearing the block apart is mind-blowing. And this brilliantly illustrates the staggering evolution of Porsche engineering. We go from the 272 horsepower air-cooled engine of the classic 993 all the way to the water-cooled 4.0-liter monster in the 911 ST, putting down 518 horsepower. It's nearly double the power, and it utilizes a fully variable oil pressure pump with 7 suction stages just to keep everything lubricated at those insane forces. Of course, all that power is completely useless if you can't deliver it to the wheels. So let's step into the drivetrain assembly zone for Section 4, Evolution of the Transmission.
The history of the Porsche transaxle is basically a constant battle to beef up the mechanics to handle ever-increasing horsepower. It started back in 1964 with the quirky Type 901, featuring a dogleg first gear and Ball-ring synchronizer, great for racing but a bit tricky in city traffic. By 1972, the Type 915 brought a traditional H-pattern shift and a stronger case. When the turbo arrived in '75, they had to build the massive Type 930 just to handle the 326 foot-pounds of torque. And finally, in 1987, the G50 introduced Borg-Warner Synchromesh, making shifting incredibly smooth while still handling huge amounts of power.
Which perfectly leads into this quote from our sources. Porsche had a tendency to stay with a concept and develop it, as opposed to throwing it out altogether and starting fresh. Honestly, that right there is the secret sauce behind the 911's enduring success. It's a continuous, relentless refinement of a single, brilliant idea.
All right, on to Section 5, Braking and Electronic Systems. You need immense stopping power for these machines, and how we achieve that today has drastically changed from the past. Let's move to and see how this builds. To understand the shift, just look at the service manuals for a classic 993. The parking brake required physical turnbuckle adjustments just to set it properly. We're talking a purely mechanical linkage requiring hand tools and physical calibration to set the brake shoe air gap. Very hands-on.
Contrast that with today. Modern Porsches use electronic parking brakes, or EPB, and there are actually 3 distinct types. You have hybrid systems with a rotor and internal drum, fully electronic systems integrated directly into the rotor, and single left actuator systems. Because of this, the service routines vary completely, often requiring complex digital calibrations through a scan tool rather than just turning a nut with a wrench.
And for primary braking, the 911 S/T utilizes the phenomenal Porsche Ceramic Composite Brakes, or PCCB. We're talking about 6-piston aluminum monoblock fixed calipers gripping massive 410mm front discs. It provides a level of fade-free stopping power that would have literally seemed like science fiction to an engineer in the 1960s.
And finally, Section 6, the wetting and final polish. This is without a doubt the emotional climax of the entire factory tour.
They literally call it the wetting. This is the cinematic moment where robotic arms lower the completed engine, transmission, and chassis subframe up into the painted body shell. It has to align perfectly. The exact moment they connect, automated tools perform immediate final torque checks and electronic sensor calibrations. It's incredible. The separate parts finally become a living, breathing machine.
And speaking of that painted body shell, the paint and saddler shops are where the aesthetics are totally perfected. We're talking flawless, mirror-like finishes. You can choose from tons of paint-to-sample custom options. Or if you spec a turbo model, you'll see details in Turbo Night. It's this exclusive, super sleek anthracite color reserved specifically for Porsche turbo models, used on wing slats, window surrounds, and the crests to signify its top-tier status.
So the crucial point is this. No 911 just rolls off the line and onto a delivery truck. In the final quality shop, the vehicle undergoes a brutal, uncompromising battery of tests. They check panel gaps down to the millimeter, they do water tightness validation, they test for noise, vibration, and harshness, they run it on a dynamometer for real-world simulation, and finally, a professional driver actually takes it out on a road test. From the quirky dogleg gears of the 1964 Type 901, all the way to the screaming 9,000 RPM heart of the modern 911 ST, it leaves us with one incredibly exciting question. What limits will the next generation of this living machine shatter? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, diving deep into the structural and historical birthplace of an absolute icon. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.